From the heart of the city too busy to hate. A progressive voice making too much sense for corporate media's comfort. This is The Ron Show, where we the people come first. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Hello, and thank you for listening on Georgia Now, weekdays 4 to 6 p.m., also 11 p.m. weeknights at Progressive Voices via TuneIn, or if you listen via podcast, well, hey, kudos to you. Thank you for listening wherever you podcast. I'm going to start with a voice that a lot of you don't want to hear right away off the top of the show, but listen to him anyway. Just grit through it.
Yeah, please.
Do you feel any urgency to end the shutdown in the next week, 2 weeks, or would you be fine if it stretches into November and then toward the holidays with folks not getting paid?
Well, shutdown, we've had many, many shutdowns, and this is a shutdown that shouldn't have happened. A group of people brilliantly decided to make it after the election. I said, thank you very much. In other words, give it to Trump instead of Biden. So it shouldn't happen. And likewise, debt ceiling shouldn't have. But the great big, beautiful bill solved the debt ceiling problem for
Is there a point where you would reach out to...
No. Here's what's happening in the shutdown, though. Honestly, can I put it in plain words for you? And you're a smart guy, so you'll understand. But a lot of people don't. The Democrats are getting killed on the shutdown because we're closing up programs that are Democrat programs that we were opposed to. Mm-hmm. So we're being able, and they're never going to come back in many cases. So we're being able to do things that we were unable to do before. So we're closing up programs that are Democrat programs that we wanted to close up or that we never wanted to happen, and now we're closing them up. And we're not going to let them come back. The Democrats are getting killed. And we're going to have a list of them on Friday, closing up some of the most egregious, socialist, semi-communist, probably not full communist, we're saving that for New York, but semi-communist programs, and we're closing them up. We're not closing up Republican programs because we think they work. So the Democrats are getting killed, but they're not telling the people about that. I say it, I haven't said it probably as bluntly as I just said it, but so we are closing up Democrat programs that we think, that we disagree with, and they're never going to open again.
Let's take this to Sammy Jones at Win the Job on TikTok, just for a reality check.
If you are naive enough to think that the pause to SNAP benefits on November 1st isn't going to affect you because you don't receive food stamps, I want you to hear this. About 1 in 8 Americans receive SNAP benefits. In fact, in Oklahoma, where I live, that's 1 in 6 people. So about 600,000 people in my state alone, Oklahoma, receive SNAP benefits. About 1 in 4 children in the U.S. receive SNAP benefits. But you're not one of those people, so you don't care. Hang with me. When those benefits go away, just about $9 billion in grocery spending vanishes. So you've got to be thinking about not just the grocery stores being able to stay open and pay their employees, but you have to think about the entire supply chain, trucks on the road, people who provide food to these grocery stores. $9 billion. Every dollar spent in SNAP benefits adds about $1.50 to $1.80 to the economy. So cutting those benefits isn't saving that dollar, it's taking away that $1.50 to your local economy. But you don't receive SNAP benefits, you don't work for a grocery store, you don't drive a truck, you don't give a shit. But when all of those things happen, the only way to combat that is to drastically increase the price of groceries. Grocery prices are already up over 3% in 2025 alone, which is almost an entire percentage higher than the average increase in grocery prices over the last 20 years. I thought they were supposed to go down day one, though. So even if SNAP benefits only pause for 1 month, which, by the way, would be detrimental to all the people I mentioned before that you don't give a about, it will cost the economy roughly $13 to $14 billion in profit. And you can expect your grocery prices in just that 1 month to go up at least 1%. And states will stand to lose about $300 to $500 million in sales tax revenue. So even if you do not receive SNAP benefits, you never have, you never will, you do not want these to be paused on November 1st.
And here in the state of Georgia, about 1.3 million Georgians rely on SNAP benefits. That according to state data. Caleb Groves at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporting that state officials announced that Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits, also known as food stamps, will not be available if the government shutdown continues into next month. We're talking this Saturday. No more SNAP benefits. Clock's ticking, Congress. About 1.3 million people in Georgia who are SNAP recipients can use their benefits through October, but beginning November 1st, according to Caleb Groves at the AJC, their benefit cards will be unavailable. Recipients should plan ahead now and shop for needed items, the Georgia Department of Human Services said in a statement. Money for the federally funded program would be unavailable starting in November, but people could still apply for SNAP benefits. They can apply, they just won't get. The U.S. Department of Agriculture notified state officials earlier this month that there would be insufficient funds to cover November benefits. The Georgia announcement came on day 24 of the government shutdown, the second longest funding lapse in history. Also on November 1st, expanded work requirements enacted by President Donald Trump's budget bill will go into effect in Georgia. The irony. The new requirements are expected to make it harder for some adults to enroll in the program, especially those who, can't work because of disabilities. About 382,000 Georgians could lose SNAP benefits under new requirements, according to estimates by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, a left-of-center think tank. So if you're adding it all up, that is 1.682 million Georgians that could wind up without food on November 1st. Trump's tax and spending bill, Caleb Grove's writing, will also shift some benefit costs and more of the SNAP's administrative costs onto states. Fortunately, Georgia has a $14+ billion surplus, so okay. But Georgia could be required to pay $487 million annually to fully fund the program starting in 2028 or cut benefits. Hello. This is where I tell you, starting in 2028, you could have, or actually before 2028, before the starting of November 2028, you could have a Democratic governor in the governor's office who could be the one that decides whether to fully fund the program with the $14 billion sitting in the surplus kitty or cut benefits. You know what the GOP gubernatorial candidates would do. Do you know what the Democratic candidates would do? I think you do. You have a choice to make. Anyway, food assistance is estimated to be reduced by $69 billion over the next decade, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Again, that reporting from Caleb Groves at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I will include that in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. Bear in mind, there is a paywall. Sorry, but I just read the entire article to you as well. This from The Hill, by the way. Glenn Altshuler, an opinion contributor at The Hill, writes that Donald Trump says he's targeting Democratic programs, but the suffering is and will be bipartisan. I mean, I think we all knew this, but anyway. Glenn Altshuler is the Thomas and Dorothy Litwin Emeritus Professor of American Studies at Cornell University. So MAGA will just say, oh, he's just a Ivy League pinhead. Throughout the government shutdown, President Trump has maintained that his administration would clear out deadwood, waste, and fraud. Because Democrats started this thing, he has said, the shutdown presents an unprecedented opportunity to eliminate Democrat-oriented programs and give his opponents, quote, a taste of their own medicine. Trump then posted an image of himself on Truth Social, signing a document emblazoned with a statement, cry all you want. America, this is allegedly what the majority of you voted for. $40 billion for Argentina, not for you. Trump did not specify what qualifies as a Democrat-oriented program, as he must know the impact of gutting federal agencies will be felt by Americans throughout the country, with the pain falling disproportionately on lower-income individuals and families, millions of whom voted for him, Altshuler writes. Shutdown firings have just begun and have already been challenged in court. So far, layoffs affect programs in the Treasury Department, Health and Human Services, and the Department of Education. Virtually all staff in the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services have been terminated. And can I just tell you, like having a child born into your family with special education and rehabilitation service needs, that lottery doesn't know partisanship, doesn't care. Responsible for distributing $15 billion in federal appropriations under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, which requires states to provide special education services to tens of millions of children, the office monitors compliance and informs parents, family members, daycare, and public school administrators of their rights and responsibilities. Almost all 60 staff members working on a college prep program for students from economically disadvantaged families were also permanently laid off. The Department of Education, which Trump intends to abolish, also oversees Title I funding for schools in low-income neighborhoods, assists low-income and first-generation students attending college, and helps support historically black colleges and universities. Remember now, Trump had been bragging after his first term how much he contributed to black colleges and universities. Historical amounts, he would say. Never mind that most of that stemmed from an Obama program that he initially had on the chopping block and then restored and wanted credit for restoring it. I mean, All 83 members of the Treasury Department's Community Development Financial Institutions Fund, which allocates money to private-public partnerships supporting low-income communities, have been laid off. When Trump signed an executive order in March cutting appropriations for the fund, a bipartisan group of 23 U.S. senators informed him that for every dollar spent by the government, the initiative, quote, generates at least $8 more from private sector investment. That is an investment you would be foolish not to make if it were presented to you, right? Altshuler continues, an even larger group of senators endorsed the fund in August in an appeal to Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vought, who I cannot believe could possibly have a soul. 100 employees at the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration have been let go. But I thought mental health was such a priority for Republicans. It always seems to be after a mass gun violence scenario. The agency, which had a staff of 900 when Trump took office, now has about half that number. Created by Congress with bipartisan support in 1992, it distributes most of the $7.5 billion budget directly to the states for mental health and addiction diagnoses and treatment. On October 10th, Altshuler continues, 1,300 employees of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention received termination notices. Within days, 700 of the pink slips were rescinded. Health and Human Services attributed the error to, quote, data discrepancies and processing errors. Nonetheless, the CDC, once acclaimed as the gold standard for epidemic and chronic disease prevention and treatment, has lost a third of its staff just since January. If you wanted to weaken America's public health capacity without saying it outright, a CDC official maintains, this is how to do it. Remove the people who connect the dots, steady the ship, and keep the public informed. The shutdown layoffs, it seems clear, continue the dismantling of federal government services begun this January 20th. Signed into law by Trump on July 4th, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act cuts $1 trillion from Medicaid over 10 years, by far the largest reduction in the program's history. According to the Congressional Budget Office, these reductions and rule changes in the Supplemental Nutrition Program, we just talked about SNAP, right, will cause 11.8 million lower-income Americans to lose their health insurance and food supplement eligibility by 2034. The removal of policies, this is, by the way, where you're going to need Democrats to take back offices and legislative bodies in order to save you from that by 2034. It's 26, 28, 30, 32. You've got 4 election cycles. And you know what holding off on a problem does, right? It just makes the solution that much more expensive. Altshuler continues, the removal of policies that simplify applications and automatically enroll some people will mean that 1.2 million Americans who qualify for Medicare will not receive Medicaid benefits. Older couples with annual incomes of $21,000 could face $8,300 hikes in health insurance premiums. In 2026, a law requiring additional cuts in Medicare if the federal government deficit exceeds a certain threshold may well kick in. These changes make it likely that emergency room visits by uninsured people will surge, putting additional pressure on hospitals, which must treat them even though they will not be compensated. When the estimated 1.8 million rural Americans are thrown off the Medicaid rolls, hospitals that serve them could close, if they haven't already, as some have here in Georgia. In August, the administration withheld a sizable chunk of the 2025 congressional appropriation under Title X, a federal government program that dates back to the Nixon administration, dedicated to family planning, pregnancy, and related health services. The sequester jeopardizes access to birth control for 800,000 women with low incomes. 15 organizations are suing. At the end of 2025, subsidies for Americans insured under the Affordable Care Act are set to expire. A majority of them live in Republican congressional districts. 3/4 of households receiving subsidies have an income of $37,650 or less. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, premiums affecting about 22 million people will rise, on average, by 75%. That's what Democrats are holding out for. Republicans to accept that that's going to happen and to join them in stopping it. And Republicans refuse to do so. Mike Johnson refuses to reopen the House to deal with that. There are even Republicans who say they have bills ready to vote on and pass to extend those ACA credits by a year, 2 years, 6 years. They can't do that if the House isn't open. And if Johnson opens a House, he has to swear in a new Democratic representative who is the deciding vote on the releasing of the Epstein files in full. ACA recipients earning 150 to 200% above the poverty line, or $64,300 for a family of 4. By the way, For a family of four, $63,000 ain't much. We'll get a 400% increase. That's right, increase from $180 to $905. The Congressional Budget Office predicts that 4 million people will be unable to afford health insurance. Are these programs Democrat-oriented? Altshuler asks. He says, I think there are more important questions to ask. Are the programs on the chopping block good ways to spend our tax dollars? Are they better or worse than Republican-oriented priorities, he asks. These would apparently include tax cuts that increase the deficit by more than $3 trillion in the next decade, while putting an average of $12,650 in the pockets of people with annual incomes of $217,000 or more. Also, Republican-oriented is an increase in ICE's budget by $8.7 billion to $27.8 billion. In a democracy, we the people should answer these questions, shouldn't we? Again, that's in the Hill. I'll share that in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. Written by Glenn Shea Altshuler, the Thomas and Dorothy Litwin Emeritus Professor of American Studies at Cornell University. Listen, as much as anybody, I'm shocked, horrified at the pending doom for those Democrat-oriented programs that Donald Trump keeps saying he's going to target. But I'm glad that he calls them that. That's good for Democrats. Call them that. And then let everyone who suffers from the evisceration of the funding for them understand who's responsible for those programs existing in the first place, and also who's responsible for them disappearing. It's The Ron Show on Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. The Ron Show Now, a 2-hour affair, airing weekdays 4 to 6 p.m. on Georgia Now. The Georgia Now app available on the App Store, Google Play, as well as at heargeorgianow.com if you want to listen live there. And I just found out we're on the iHeartRadio app as well when you search Georgia Now. You also hear The Ron Show weeknights at 11 p.m. on Progressive Voices via TuneIn, working on making that a 2-hour endeavor. One of my favorite pundits, I just finally got in touch with her last night. Her name is Kathy Woolard. She was an Atlanta City Council president, wasn't she? She was the first elected LGBTQIA plus person to a municipal office in the city of Atlanta, so she's a history maker on that regard. She brought up a really important point I thought was worth revisiting when it came to the nut job from Cartersville who wandered in with 27 rounds and an AR-15 looking to shoot the place up. Here's what she said yesterday on Fox 5 WAGA TV's The Georgia Gang that I just thought needed to be resonant.
But I think it bears noting that our General Assembly passed a law that allows people to carry concealed weapons into the airport without a permit. Some of the most foolish legislation I've ever seen in my life. That doesn't stop crazy people from coming in with a gun, but the fact that we have double the national rate of guns being found by TSA as people are going through the security checkpoints is notable, and it's scary. And when you go into a place and somebody, is openly carrying a gun or carrying a concealed weapon, but you can see it, you don't know if they're a good guy or bad guy. And unfortunately, it's mostly guys. So I just think we need to note this, that our General Assembly has taken an action that has given people the thought that they can actually show up with a gun. What they do with it later, of course, is determined by what happens.
And let me just tell you, by the way, at this point, we still don't know where, was it Billy Ray, Billy Joe, Billy something or other, Billy Joe Cagle, right? We still don't know where he got that AR-15. How did someone who apparently was on some mental wellness medication of some sort, because his brother told authorities he was off his meds. That's what the family said. Oh, he's off his meds. So there goes the insanity plea right away. So it'll be a lesser fine or a lesser sentence, I'm sure. It's a federal crime because he was carrying as a convicted felon. Which again begs the question: where did old Billy Boy here get an AR-15 and 27 rounds so easily? To be honest with you, as Kathy was pointing out, in the state of Georgia, you can walk in to the airport with a gun on you if you want to. Yeah. And the only thing that was different in Billy's case was, he was on FaceTime telling his family what he was going to do, and they were obviously deeply concerned, and thank God they reached out to local law enforcement, which reached out to Atlanta law enforcement and to airport security as well. But the only thing that really would have made a difference, say if Billy had kept this all to himself, except for going through with it, was that he parked illegally. I mean, obviously, if you park illegally at the airport after 9/11 and all the shoe bomb and all that stuff after 9/11 and 2001, Like you can't park near the airport illegally. You cannot leave a vehicle unattended for sure. But trust me, I've dropped off a lot of friends at the airport over the years. Man, those security folks working the traffic, they will whistle their asses off to make sure that everybody knows you ain't supposed to be where you are, or get moving, or et cetera and so on. So that is the thing. Obviously, again, the family calling FaceTime and doing their part by reaching out to local law enforcement who followed the chain of command here at Atlanta PD to make sure that the authorities found this guy. That's important. But if he hadn't have contacted FaceTime, the only thing that would have been of any concern or a signal to law enforcement, it might have been too late if Billy had wanted to really go through with this, was the fact that he parked illegally. Because you can be in the airport with a gun on you, thanks to, I think it was kind of Catholic to say, the Georgia legislature. She should have said Republicans in the General Assembly instead of just the General Assembly. Anyway, a quick break. Back after this. Thank you so much for listening. It's The Ron Show on Georgia Now. Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast.
Broadcasting 5 days a week to make common sense common again. This is The Ron Show.
Airing weekdays 4 to 6 p.m. on Georgia Now. Georgia Now app's available on the App Store, Google Play, also at heargeorgianow.com, and on the iHeartRadio app you can listen as well. Weeknights, The Ron Show airs 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Can I be honest? I genuinely don't know what to make of this quirky little story that actually the pundit panel on the Georgia Gang covered as well. That airing last yesterday actually, on WAGA Fox 5 here in Atlanta. They recorded the show on Friday. They always do that on Friday, by the way. I really don't know what to make of this quirky story regarding Patty Duran, who is a clean energy advocate here in the state of Georgia. She's been accused of stealing Georgia Power trade secrets that were left for her to take at a public hearing. It feels a little entrappy, and I've reached out to Patty and told her, come on the show, tell your side of the story. I'm sure she's got an attorney or two that are telling her, maybe stay out of the public eye on this, maybe don't leave any comments out there without being able to control the questions that I'm going to ask, and I don't let anybody do that. She's probably right to avoid coming on anything and putting her testimony on record outside of a court of law. Let me first give you the story from Alondra Roca at the Georgia Recorder. Patty Duran, a former Democratic candidate for Georgia Public Service Commission and a clean energy advocate, was arrested Tuesday for the alleged theft of a Georgia Power document containing trade secrets during a commission meeting earlier that day. Georgia Capitol Police arrested Duran, who is a frequent critic of the Public Service Commission, on Tuesday before transferring her to Fulton County Jail. According to the arrest warrant, Duran, quote, intentionally took a booklet containing confidential information owned by Georgia Power Company without permission. Duran's arrest was first reported by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Duran did not yet have an attorney listed as of last Wednesday. I'm sure she does by now, though, according to the Fulton County Clerk's Office. Attempts to reach Duran for a comment Wednesday were unsuccessful. And again, I haven't heard from her myself. I'll be honest with you, I've seen the video. It's rather damning. Let me go back to Alondra Roca's reporting at the Georgia Recorder. The arrest warrant alleges that Duran was captured on a video recording re-entering the PSC meeting during a lunch break and walking past a desk containing a booklet labeled Georgia Power Trade Secrets. Who the hell labels it in such a way? I mean, come on. A little foolish on Georgia Power to even say, hey, this is top secret stuff. Nobody look at it. It's left right here on the table for anyone to just walk past, but don't look at it. What a stupid way to... That being said, you can see the video yourself. I'll include the article in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. There's a video embed. It's pretty damning. But again, the book was labeled Georgia Power Trade Secrets. Why would you label the book that? That's stupid. Anyway, Duran initially picked up the booklet and put it back. She then walked past a second desk. First of all, no, this is an incorrect. All right, here's what she did. She picked up a booklet and put it back. She walked past the second desk. It's kind of set up like where there's like two tables and a podium in the middle. Either side can sit on, it's kind of like in a courtroom where like defense is on one side, a prosecution on the other. So then she walked to the second desk and saw a similar booklet. And she kind of flipped through it. Actually, no, she looked at it and then walked away towards the doorway and then turned around to see like, wow, nobody noticed that I was doing that? I mean, that's kind of what it looks like. I hate to, and again, I'm a clean energy guy too, and I've had Patty on this show. I can't explain this video. When you see it, you're like, what? So then, when she realized no one was casing her, She went back to a similar booklet on the second table, and then let's get to Alana Roca's reporting here. Flipped through the booklet briefly before placing the booklet into her purse and left the meeting room without returning. That's what the warrant says. That's what the video shows. Last week's Public Service Commission proceedings were held to consider a request from Georgia Power to add nearly 10,000 megawatts to the state's power grid. About 60% of the energy requested would come from expanding or building new gas plants, while 40%, okay, 40% is better than none, right, would come from renewable energy. Duran, who this year founded Georgians for Affordable Energy, a watchdog organization, claimed in her comments during a public hearing earlier Tuesday that Georgia Power is prioritizing profits for its 5 affiliated gas companies and building natural gas power plants instead of focusing more on solar panels and battery storage. She said that Georgia Power should be held accountable for its immoral actions. There is no court in the land that would allow that kind of corruption to go on, and I have no idea why the state of Georgia does, Duran said. She also criticized Georgia Power in a Sunday email newsletter for seeking approval for a plan that she estimates would cost customers over 3 times as much as the Plant Vogtle nuclear expansion project. Duran wrote that while Georgia Power's filing shows about $15.7 billion for certified projects, a project cost summary table is fully redacted. Duran claimed that energy experts estimate those redacted costs to be about $5 to $6 billion, a huge number. Duran alleged the costs are redacted because the company doesn't want the public to know, quote, these costs are required to be paid by customers throughout construction. Okay, but back to the crime. Jennifer Whitfield, or an alleged crime. Jennifer Whitfield, a senior attorney with the Southern Environmental Law Center, said in a statement that, quote, the stakes are really high for Georgians right now, and people feel desperate, but denounced Duran's alleged theft. While we do have serious concerns about Georgia Power's use of trade secrets, those concerns must be addressed through the proper legal channels. I mean, if you can get them to cough up these secrets, right, or you can get the stuff unredacted, I mean, why, what is, But again, why would you leave something out there that says Georgia Power trade secrets for all to see? I mean, this is like Beyonce's backup dancer, right? You mean to tell me you left a laptop with all of her dance choreography and music and all? You left that laptop in the backseat of a car in the city of Atlanta, knowing that the window could get popped and that laptop could get stolen. Backup dancer should be fired. Whoever left that stuff out in that meeting room, whacked. Sorry, you got to go. You don't leave first of all, you don't label the book Georgia Power Trade Secrets and then leave it. You don't do one and then you don't do the other, and you don't do both. Ugh. Sarah Brewerton Palmer, a First Amendment and business law attorney and president of the Georgia First Amendment Foundation, said in a phone interview that the incident underscores the need for the PSC and other governmental agencies to balance allowing companies to shield sensitive business information with ensuring adequate government transparency. Whenever information in the hands of the government is kept from the public, it raises a specter of suspicion, and this lack of transparency lets conspiracy theories fester and tends to feed a public perception of unfairness and background deals and all that sort of stuff, which is why we have transparency laws in the first place, Brewerton Palmer said. A perceived lack of transparency in the PSC's dealings with Georgia Power has been scrutinized more intensely recently after the commission approved 6 energy bill increases over 2 years with the by the way, GOP PSC. Groups like the SELC and other organizations filed a motion seeking access to some data on cost and power generation from the public, according to a July report from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. However, the Public Service Commission, 5-0 Republican, denied the motion, stating that it might reconsider the issue in the future. Yeah, and pigs might fly out of my Matthew Kent, a spokesperson for Georgia Power, said in a statement that confidential data is meant to protect customers' interests. And, quote, ensure we deliver the best value to all customers. Again, Unauthorized disclosures risks harming both our company, the vendors, and contractors with whom we do business, and the customers we serve, he said. Naturally, the Georgia Republican Party quickly pounced on Duran's arrest, trying to make this about the candidates running for the Democratic Party to seek those 2 seats. Even though Patty Duran works for neither of them. They don't work for her. They're not associated with her nonprofit. Early voting is underway for a pair of commission seats that are on the ballot, and Georgia Republicans have been openly concerned that Democratic candidates Peter Hubbard and Alicia Johnson could flip 2 PSC seats in this year's unique off-year election, where experts say that municipal elections could favor Democratic mobilization. So Josh McCoon, state GOP chair, said in a statement that, quote, there's no leftist activist more involved in pushing the candidacies of the 2 Democrat candidates for PSC than Patty Duran, and that she built, quote, her brand by attacking the Public Service Commission. Georgia voters should take note of these illegal actions, he said in a statement. The rhetoric of Patty Duran telegraphs the Democrats' extreme plans for the PSC. What, to not raise rates 6 times in 2 years? How extreme. Plans that will lower our power supply and reliability and that will lead to higher prices for Georgia families. Because Georgia families already don't have higher prices with those 6 rate increases in the last 2 years. Josh. Alonda Roca does point out at the end here, Duran was a Democratic candidate for the commission in 2022 before she was drawn out of the district she was attempting to represent through redistricting, gerrymandering. That election was ultimately postponed because of an ongoing lawsuit challenging the at-large method of seating commissioners who represent districts but are elected statewide. Republicans are okay with cheating and fudging rules. And, of course, they love redacting, if not withholding, files altogether. Epstein files. But they love to howl like a scalded dog when, again, inexplicably, I look at the video and I go, what was she thinking? She was thinking she couldn't get caught or wasn't getting caught, is my summation. Then again, you just don't put Georgia Power trade secrets on the booklet and then leave the table with the stack of booklets there. It's dumb. It was dumb what she did. It's dumb what they did. It's a really dumb story. And it's also really dumb for the Republican Party to think voters are so stupid to play the whole leftist, extremist, what's going to happen when 2 Democrats are elected? Your rates are going to increase. You mean like they haven't already? 6 times in 2 years with a full Republican slate on that board? Try again, guy. That ain't going to work. That dog won't hunt. Anyway, Patty Duran, welcome on this show to explain herself at any point in time. She knows that, and she knows how to reach out to me. It's The Ron Show. Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Final segment of today's Ron Show, and this is one of these segments where I'm just going to ask you to indulge me. If you came here for politics, that's cool. I gave you 3 segments. This last one is just going to be me openly commiserating about my lot in life as an Atlanta Falcons fan. I'm over it. I'm completely over it. In fact, I have, at least I'm proud to say, happy to say, mentally well enough to say, I have gotten to the point where I don't let my Sundays be dictated by when the Falcons play. That's right. Especially at 1 o'clock kickoff. 4 o'clock kickoff, just as likely. Not as, if they're going to play prime time, yeah, I might watch. In fact, I know I'm going to watch. In fact, I might go to my favorite sports bar. Wolf's here in Atlanta is, by the way, an LGBTQI plus sports bar. It's a lot of fun. I've taken straight friends there. It's just a sports bar. I mean, they might get some attention from people they wouldn't expect to, but whatever, they don't care. Anyway, let me get back to the Falcons. Here in Atlanta, we love Arthur Blank. Arthur Blank is about the most benevolent human being in modern municipal, metro, even state history. He purchased the Atlanta Falcons in the early 2000s and almost immediately turned that franchise around. The Rankin Smith family had run it for more than 30 years and had a smattering of playoff appearances, none of them reaching any further than towards the end when they got to their 1 Super Bowl appearance, which ended in embarrassment with safety Eugene Robinson propositioning an undercover police officer for oral sex the night before. I mean, I'm telling you, check on your Falcon fan friends if you know any. Check on them because we're not well. We are a PTSD-riddled, psychologically abused fan base. And yesterday was no different. This season came with a lot of promise, right? We got the head coach that a majority of the fan base was happy with 2 years ago. We paid a ton of money for a free agent quarterback that we thought was coveted. Turned out not to be all that coveted by many teams, but we paid a lot for him. And then also decided we should also maybe draft a quarterback for the future since he's just coming off an injury, the quarterback we just spent a ton of money on. And so they did. in the same offseason. And a lot of folks, myself included, we wondered, why did you pay all that money for a quarterback if you don't plan to use him for more than one season, but you signed him to a 4-year deal and all that money and the salary cap and blah, 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 blah. And then you sign that young quarterback and you hope to have him for 6 seasons or more. If he strikes, then you're going to keep him forever, right? Okay, so that was a lot of money squandered, a lot of money that could have gone to other things, other needs. None of this, by the way, on Arthur Blank. None of this on the head coach, Raheem Morris, although he had to be in the room when these decisions were being made, right? So maybe a little on Raheem Morris, the head coach, but definitely on the general manager, Terry Fontenot, who, by the way, used to be a New Orleans Saints executive. And in Atlanta, we always wonder, if you work for the Saints, are you now a sleeper agent for the Saints while we're paying you? I don't think that's the case, but things aren't going well. Yesterday, they lost at home to a team that came in with 1 win in 7 games. The Falcons were 3-3. They'd had a disappointing game the Sunday before, but they were on the road in San Francisco, time difference, and blah, blah, blah. You know, those things happen. San Francisco's a really good team, too, right? Kyle Shanahan, the head coach, he used to be the Falcons' offensive coordinator. Oh, also, by the way, last night I was watching the Green Bay Packers with head coach Matt LaFleur, who used to be the quarterback coach under Kyle Shanahan when he was with the Atlanta Falcons. Green Bay's a really good team. They're a Super Bowl threat. The Falcons are not. Nowhere near it. Not even close. Not after yesterday, losing to that 1-win Miami Dolphins team that was rudderless. Its head coach already on the hot seat. And so now the Falcons are 3-4. Next week they'll take on the New England Patriots. Remember them? 28-3. Yeah. So we thought they had hit the skids, but they're now like 5-2 and drafted a quarterback, the heir apparent to Tom Brady. Finally got that one right. And he's an MVP candidate. Falcons are going to lose next Sunday. And then they're going to go to London, and they're probably going to lose to the Indianapolis Colts, who have won all but one game this season. So they're going to come back from that 2-week road trip from Boston to, I want to say Berlin, Barcelona, forget, and then back. They'll be 3-6. And they'll have a second-year head coach and a second-year quarterback and a fan base wondering what the hell happened. They're going to need to win 9, maybe 10 games to make the playoffs. They're not going to make the playoffs. You can't lose by 30 on the road to Carolina, a team that was a cellar dweller last year. You can't lose by 24 at home to Miami, which is a 1-win football team, and consider yourself a playoff contender. I mean, sure, stranger things have happened, and maybe there'll be this rapid turnaround, and we'll finally see the team that folks have envisioned. But come on. I'm a Falcons fan. I'm a realist. I'm a skeptic, but I'm also a realist. This team is not turning around. They play in a world-class facility, and they can't even pack the place out. To me, they seem to spend a lot more time worrying about the affair, the party, the music, than they do the product on the field. When I was a kid, man, Sundays were all about the Falcons. I grew up watching the Falcons, and they weren't good then either. They weren't. But in the 80s and the 90s, there wasn't much else, right? And now you got all manner of other things that can occupy your time and your mind on Sundays. And I've just gotten to a point in my life, and maybe it was the 28-3 thing. Maybe it was the Super Bowl. I just started withdrawing bit by bit, little by little, from my fanaticism with this football team. And I couldn't really even be emotionally invested enough yesterday in that humiliating loss to even feel humiliated. I was that way when I watched the Carolina game too. I had better expectations, but I saw where it was going pretty early on. And listen, yesterday you can't even blame it on the second-year quarterback because he didn't play. He's injured. I think he'll play next Sunday, but maybe he won't. But you can blame it on the 9-figure quarterback that you spent all that money for, who believes he should be a starting quarterback. He was a little butthurt by signing the contract and then seeing a player to replace him being drafted almost immediately. And he had a right to be. I think so. I mean, they weren't very forthright with him about that. And that's the other thing, the unprofessionalism of this organization. They went out and they hired a head coach who had been there before. So they wanted to kind of keep a little familial connection, which is great if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and you have a lineage of winning. But when you're the Atlanta Falcons, man, you ever this is me telling on myself a little bit. You ever just driving down the road and you're all by yourself and, you're like, what's the harm? I'll let it rip. And even you can't stand yourself. And so you roll all the windows down, right? And just flush all that air out. The Atlanta Falcons long ago had a stench in the car and needed to flush all the air out. And I don't know if that means Arthur Blank needs to sell the team. I mean, I kind of hope not. I'd like for him to be able to hoist a Super Bowl trophy before he passes. And I feel like he's panicking. He's hitting every button and doing just about whatever it takes to make sure that happens. And it ain't happening. In fact, it only pushes the franchise further and further back. Even the Bijan Robinson, everybody loves Bijan Robinson. I love Bijan Robinson. Great running back. He's going to be all-world for the rest of his career in the NFL. But the Falcons didn't need a running back when they drafted him. It was an embarrassment of riches, actually, to get him the year after he had gotten Tyler Algier, who rushed for more than 1,000 yards in his rookie season. And you've relegated him to secondary status. And when he becomes a free agent, you won't be able to afford him because he's not that important to you, and he'll go be a 1,000-yard rusher for some other team for 3 or 4 years. But you could have gotten that secondary running back with Tyler Algier being your main guy and spent a lot less. And with that pick for Bijan Robinson, you could have gotten Jackson Smith-Njigba, the all-world wide receiver who's just lighting it up for Seattle. You lost yesterday 34-10, and a lot of that came from not having your starting wide receiver, Drake London, playing. But you also didn't have a good secondary option, which you could have drafted instead of Bijan Robinson, who did not have a good game yesterday, or really the week before either. And I actually think Bijan Robinson is going to be a superstar. It just isn't all that necessary that he was going to be a superstar for the Falcons, honestly. The general manager, Terry Fontenot, he always talks about, we're always, drafting and evaluating for the best player available. Nobody had your quarterback, Michael Penix, that high in the draft, and yet you drafted him. Was he a need? Well, you just spent $150 million for a veteran quarterback to a 4-year deal that tells me that you didn't think that was that much of a need after spending that kind of money for that many years on a contract. And you just had a 1,000-yard rusher. So why did you draft a quarterback? And then why did you draft a wide receiver? I mean, listen, I'm just a gay guy who watches sports, who talks politics and sells real estate. And yet I'm sitting here thinking to myself, if I feel like I know that much more about what a team should be doing, isn't that an indictment on the general manager who doesn't have a winning season under his belt as general manager of this franchise that I used to be so fond of, so enamored with, so drawn to, and now feel so distant from? And here's the crazy thing. As much as I spend time on this podcast championing diversity, equity, and inclusion, I just find myself wondering, okay, was the head coach hired because he checked a box, or because he came from the organization before and there was familiarity, or both, or neither, or were his bona fides just far and above better than everybody else? Well, Mike Vrabel is the brand new coach of the New England Patriots, and he's 6-2. Raheem Morris is in his second season and has a losing record last season and a losing record so far this season. Was the quarterback draft selection made strictly about talent and need? Well, it wasn't about need because you just signed a 9-figure quarterback. So was it about talent? Okay. Well, that quarterback has a losing record now, 9 games into his career. I guess my question is, what are we doing here? Well, what is the goal? I don't see a blueprint. Much like with Democrats, I don't see God, don't call it this, Project 2029. I don't see a master blueprint for a vision for where America should be from the Democratic Party. And I don't see a master vision of where the Atlanta Falcons should be either. And both frustrate me. And leadership frustrates me. And decisions frustrate me. And choosing who should lead what often frustrate me. Thank you so much for indulging me on that conversation. Felt like I needed to have it. And I don't want to have the same lack of passion for the Democratic Party that I do for my beloved Atlanta Falcons right now, that aren't so beloved to me anymore. Thank you for listening to The Ron Show. Weekdays 4 to 6 p.m. on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voice via TuneIn and wherever you podcast. Show notes, as always, at RonShowATL.com. Back here tomorrow. We'll see you then. Take care.